Welcome to the Spiral of the Rose podcast with our friends Kelli and Bri.
Welcome back to the Spiral of the Rose podcast, everybody. It has been a hot minute. Our last episode was released on February 17th, and we are now in the beginning of May. So it's been almost a few months, and there are so many reasons for that. So we're going to talk about that today. We're also going to talk about eclipses in general, just because I think that this eclipse portal that we just went through this spring was really, really impactful for a lot of people. And also because of our theme this season, you know, how the divine feminine was in ancient times. We're going to talk about eclipses related to the divine feminine in ancient times as well. So we're back. We're excited to be back. It's been quite a journey to get back here, which we will be chatting about lots today. And I'm definitely going to be pointing at Kelli a little bit extra in this episode, just because Kelli knows a lot about eclipses and even has offers surrounding eclipses and everything like that. So, but welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. It has been an intense few months, to say the least. So yes, this past eclipse season, typically, so we have an eclipse season like twice a year pretty much. And this past one was just so intensely felt by so many people that I have talked to, blogs that I've been reading, podcasts I've been listening to. Everybody said they felt this one especially deeper. So it's no surprise that it affected us in that way as well. And so, yeah, we took a break from this podcast, but we're back. And we'll talk a little bit today about what even like eclipses mean energetically. We're going to talk a little bit about divine feminine, ancient traditions around eclipses, and ancient myths, and just a few more things in relation to this topic. And yes, we know it's late. We know the eclipse season is technically over, but that's just how this has gone this time around. So
Yeah. And you know, I think really the fact that we took the time that we needed to do it is just so aligned with everything that we're talking about, right? Because that is that divine feminine, just trust in the process and allowing things to flow as they're going to flow. So while we maybe would have liked to have given you all some warning, we trusted what needed to be. And I will say, even probably the first few episodes for this season, we're already sort of feeling those pre-eclipse energies. We were already, it was becoming a struggle to get the episodes out. And it was just like, okay, like enough is enough. We need to trust this and listen to the nudges and take a pause. Yeah. So the actual eclipse portal, for anyone who doesn't know, was March 14th was the lunar eclipse. And then March 29th was the partial solar eclipse, plus it was the equinox. It was the beginning of the astrological new year, and all at the same time overlapping with Mercury and Venus retrogrades. So it was like, it was a hell in a handbasket kind of situation, like and a little bit of Pandora's box going on.
Yeah. And now what? We're in Pluto retrograde now, right?
Yes. Yeah. Which retrograde is very, you know, all the retrogrades are different things. I'm starting to learn a little bit about them, right? Like the Venus one had a huge impact on relationships for me, past relationships especially. And Mercury retrogrades, we all know it always affects communication and technology and things like that. Pluto retrograde is like the deep, dark depths of your soul. So that's a lot of fun. At least it's like just kind of the one thing right now, though. So
yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot, and it was a lot for everybody. Kelli, I know you ran your eclipse portal package with Heather again, which I'm sure was super, super powerful. I was in it the first time. I wasn't in it this time just because of everything I had going on. I don't know how you even managed to run it, to be perfectly honest, during that window.
Kind of a blur.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely in the comments of this episode, let us know how that eclipse portal and sort of that whole period of time, like the first quarter of the year, basically, and even into April. How was that for you? Because it was really, really, really intense for both of us.
Yeah, we'd love to know how that was for you.
Yeah.
Um,
So, do you want to talk a little bit about what came up for you, Kelli?
yeah, I can go into that. So, yeah, for me personally, it's been a lot of transitioning, like just one after another. Like, so my daughter started out at the beginning, I would say at the beginning of the Eclipse portal, she was starting to attend an alternative school, like an emotional social learning program. And by the end of the Eclipse portal, it's like we're transitioning. Now we're going to be at home. We're doing this unschooling, homeschooling thing. So it's like this whole kind of, I call it like this whole identity shift has just happened, right? It's crazy because it's like I feel deeply in my bones that this is how it was meant to go, but the road that it took to get there was very, very, very going to the depths of the underworld, harrowing type of journey. Let me
Yes.
tell you, like it was intense. But underneath it all, I felt like this is exactly where we're meant to be. Like now we're in this place where everything's coming into alignment. But that's the thing about eclipses. They take you to that depth of the underworld and then they make you see, like, if you're not listening initially, you will be listening by the end of it, right? They make you see everything that's unaligned, everything that has to fall away in order for you to get to that more aligned place where you're going to be like, and not saying like everything's always going to be perfect when you get to that aligned place, but you start to notice and you feel it deeply in your soul that you're moving through your days with more alignment. That's how I would describe it as. And so it took a while. And it was one thing after another. Like this year, I feel like, there was tons of sicknesses. January, February, I had pneumonia for like 3 weeks and I never get that sick. And it was like, what is going on with all
Yeah.
of this? Like, what is this energy? And it was just like this ultimate clearing out of everything. Everything unaligned must go type of energy. That's what it was for me, at least. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think like we were both sick around the same time, which was when we stopped recording because neither of us could talk. We completely lost our voices. I think I probably had pneumonia too, but I never got it diagnosed. I was on antibiotics for just the cough. And then it was like, that didn't even work. Like there was just so much. I was almost hospitalized. I was like, I got
yeah.
so bad that it got to the point I was throwing up on top of the other symptoms, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm dying. Do I need to go to a hospital? And I gave myself
Yeah.
overnight and I ended up improving by the next morning. So I never went, but I was like, holy cow. I have not, and I'm the same. I don't get sick very often, or if I do,
Mm-hmm.
it's minor and it goes away fairly quickly. So I was like, this is insanity. And it was for both of us at the same time. So we had also talked about, we thought there was probably some energetic stuff tied in with that.
Yeah.
We were both doing the second set of Moon Key rights at the same time too. So we were definitely having some spiritual upgrades and up levels. And we were just like, it's too much. So it was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
pause, time out. We cannot record. And I think probably both of us were coughing for a solid month at least. Right. So
Yeah. It
there
was
was
big.
just no way.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
it was the eclipse portal after that. so so yeah. And yeah, so for me, I mean, it's been fairly similar. I find it so fascinating. And I mean, Kelli and I, as all of you know, like we are business besties. We are like, we chat with each other like all day, every day. Right. And so we've found, and it's really, really fascinating, but we've found that we have really similar sort of paths happening at the same time in our lives.
Yeah.
Um, and And sometimes it's so similar, it's really eerie. And so some of the things that were coming up for me, while different diagnoses and different specific situations, it was so, so similar in that I was walking that path of advocating for my child at school,
Mm-hmm.
switching our school plan. We went from my youngest was in morning pre-K and home with me in the afternoons and my son and my older daughter were in full-time school now my youngest is in afternoon pre-K and my son only goes to school in the afternoons and we do school from home in the mornings. So we had some, big talks with the school and big shifts in our schedules and a lot of transformation. There was a lot of mindset shifting for myself as well. I have always been like, I would never homeschool. That sounds like death. And this year has been like, as a mom, and I'm sure any listeners who are moms know, like, we will do what it takes. So as much as I was like, I will never homeschool ever, I was ready to pull my kid out of school and homeschool him just because the school environment was not what was serving him best. Yeah. So we came to a different resolution. The teacher is giving me the work to do, and I just kind of guide him through it, which is a lot easier than me actually homeschooling him. But it is what works for our family, and it feels so aligned. And there's maybe like a few little tweaks left to do. We're giving it some time to see how it plays out, right? But it's fascinating to me that they're just such similar paths. And I had basically one issue or another going on with each of my kids for the last several months. And it's been a lot of like personal life stuff. And again, that makes a lot of sense with there being a Venus retrograde for a good chunk of the first part of the year, that all of the relationships were being examined, right? The ones with my children, the ones with like how we interact in the world, with the schools, and with the dads. That was another big one.
That is a good point. Yeah. And I would say similarly, like every time I thought we had something figured out, something would change. And I think that's really reflective of the energy that we've been through. Because it was like, okay, we got this figured out. Like, she's in a new school program now. We're going to be good. Next week, nope, we're not good. We're not good. Like, this isn't working. So it was like every time we had thought it was figured out, something else happened and it layered. And it was like, I think that's such a good reflection of this eclipse and the eclipse season as a total, and the retrogrades and all of the energy cumulatively. Like, don't get comfortable with where you're at. Like, it's gonna change again. It's gonna change again. It's gonna change again and again and again.
Yeah. And it was like massive highs and massive lows, right? And just those peaks and valleys. And those can be really hard to navigate. And the best way that I have found, and I would assume that you agree, Kelli, to navigate that is with a whole hell of a lot of trust and patience, and just, releasing all of the to-do lists. Like, it was basically, for me, there was like 3 months straight, almost 4, where I didn't work at all. And that was hugely confronting for me because I am like the Energizer Bunny, go, 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 usually. And so it was like, excuse me, why are you making me sit down and shut up for this long? Like, I can't. This is awful. And it was really eye-opening and also transformational. It really had me looking really closely and more deeply at what are my priorities and to what extent. I think that was the biggest thing. I always knew my kids were the priority over my business, but it was like, okay, no, it is to the point where I would drop my business in a heartbeat for my kids. And that was something that it was like, no, my business is another kid. Like, that's how much I love my business. And it was like, not actually. Nope, this is different. Right. So it was very transformational. It was very eye-opening. It was very confronting. It was very uncomfortable.
And that's so funny. Yeah, because when you said earlier, like, we kind of follow each other and similar things happen to us, right? It just happens like that. It's like crazy. Just ever since we met, it's like we're always following. And it was the same for me. I'm actually just coming out of it, so I'm a little bit delayed from where you were. But yeah, I pretty much stopped working for like 2 months. And I'm even feeling it like within the past week. I lost a sort of a contract I had with an in-person studio that I was doing sessions at. And so things are still falling away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, the residual energy from this is just crazy. Like everything unaligned is going.
Yes. And though with that comes, again, like sort of the end of what I was saying there was there's been all these transformations and all of these things that are so confronting and everything. But in the end, it all worked out so perfectly and it's been so beautiful. And the transformation has been like, wow, to look back at. And I think, you were telling me about this contract when it was ended and it was like, holy crap. And it was really sudden. It was really startling. It was really in your face. But then in the end, it was like, but actually that's perfect. Right.
Yeah.
And so it was like,
Yeah.
every step of the way has been like that. So that is a sort of very long drawn out version of without like diving too much into our private details, but
Yeah.
of why it has been almost 3 months. And probably will almost be exactly 3 months by the time this episode is released from our last episode. So, and here's the thing. Okay. This has given both of us a deeper understanding of trust in our businesses, in our, passion projects like this one that we work on, and in just like divine timing, it's going to be fine kind of thing. Right. So, we never even discussed this, but again, I'm sure that Kelli will agree that going forward on this podcast, if there are a little bit of like starts and stops and pauses, we're just going to trust that and we're going to allow it. And even, I would say, especially for you, Kelli, with Emma home full time, and me with Jace home, at least half of the time now, if not even more. We may bend a little bit in our, perfectly quiet recording times and sometimes have child interruptions, and that is part of life. So here we are, and they may be a little bit more raw, they may be a little bit more sporadic, but they're going to be here and we're going to be here because this project really matters to us. So
yeah, definitely.
So okay, let's see if we can kind of get on track because I think there was so much to unpack from the last few months that I think we could go on about that for a long time. But Kelli, again, okay, this is where I'm going to start redirecting to you, but can you tell us like the difference between lunar and solar eclipses? Is there a difference? Like what's and maybe even just sort of the overview of like, what is an eclipse portal for anyone who doesn't know? Let's start there.
Okay. So yeah, I can go over like the eclipse portal kind of high level overview type thing. So an eclipse portal is at certain times of the year, we have like these back-to-back kind of like it's typically a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, and then they start like, so for this last one you said it was
March 14th to March 29th.
Right, March 14th to 29th. So the 14th was the first eclipse, and then the second one was the 29th. And in these portals, it's typically this big transformative energy that's happening. And they also go in cycles, which is it's kind of a whole nother topic, but the eclipse portals go in kind of these 18-month cycles too. And this one was particularly important, I believe, because it was completely closing one of those 18-month cycles. Like, so this was like the final culmination of like everything that had transformed, fallen away, all of the underworld depths we went through in the last 18 months were all kind of just like coming to the surface to finally be released. And so that's why it felt so much more powerful, so much more transformative, so much more difficult, like all of the things, right? Because it was such a powerful culmination of all those energies coming together at one time. So basically, Heather and I, another one of our friends who does breath work and energy work and all of the things, right? Her and I were doing these eclipse portals together, which was just like a program of women coming together for, I would do like Reiki and hypnotherapy and Akashic records, and she would do breath work and movement. And so we were just getting them to release and to call in everything, right? So to release all those energies that weren't serving them, that were ultimately coming to the surface to be processed. So those types of programs, we did one in the fall and one in the spring. And I have to say, the spring one felt, even though there was less people in it, it felt like a lot more like the people in it had a bigger transformation to me. Like
Which
it
makes
felt
so
like,
much sense with this
yeah,
particular eclipse portal. Yeah, that makes a lot of
it
sense.
felt like they had a deeper experience, a deeper transformation. I even got, one of the women in there is someone that we love and know. And she told me on the side how powerful of a transformation she experienced. And she's a powerful healer herself. So for her to come to me and be like, no, your session like really transformed my life. That was like, wow. It was a lot of energy around that time. Just it was pretty much the perfect moment to have that kind of transformative sort of healing circle, if you
Yeah.
will. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I want to say really quickly for anyone who is not sort of actively on a healing journey or their spiritual path or anything like that, um, if you're listening to this and you're going, what the heck are you guys talking about? Like, I didn't experience any of this. That's fine. It's sort of like if you are actively working through generational traumas or like when you're on this path, you're sort of tied into these kinds of events a lot more closely, a lot more deeply. And it doesn't mean that it didn't do anything in your life. It just may not be so much like a tarot tower moment, right? Where
yeah.
it's just like, it just might be a little bit more gentle and you might not really notice it, or it might be, tiny little tweaks and pivots here and there. And I think, for those of you listening who are in more spiritual type circles, there tends to be two different groups of people within that purview. And it's like one set is going into a negative spiral. Okay. They're like, oh my gosh, there's an eclipse portal. We're
Yeah.
screwed. Right. And it's like, it's because they have this fear of like losing control and having things taken away that they don't want to lose and all of that. And that's not actually how it works. Like, if you don't want to transform, if you don't want to have that transformation, you can ignore it. You can skip over it. You can say no. Like, and Kelli and I, like, we're sitting here saying like we weren't able to work for 2 and 3 months, but we really chose that, right? We chose that. We could have been like, nope, I'm ignoring that stuff. That is not what I'm doing right now. I am going to work on my business. We didn't do that, right? We chose to lean into what was coming up for us and work through that. And there's those groups of people who are like, this is being forced on me, and that's just actually not accurate. And if you have that fear, you can just breathe a little bit easier, like let that go a little bit, because it really is up to you. It is your choice. The other side, the other group of people have this more positive view of it, where it is a natural time for death and rebirth and releasing what no longer serves us. And the reason for releasing what no longer serves us is because it brings us into better alignment in our lives and actually makes things after the transformation, it makes things easier and smoother and feel better and happier and all the things. So,
Yeah.
just to kind of put a little bit of perspective on that, maybe on why you might not be noticing it, or why you might be like, okay, this sounds like terrifying, or whatever. Like there's kind of all these different perspectives. So
Yeah, and then I have to say, adding to that, if someone is of the camp, like they're just going to ignore what's coming up, in my experience, that doesn't always go so well because it's going to come back to bite you sometime later on. And it might not be as friendly later on. It might be a total tower moment if you don't listen to the whispers, like when they first start coming through. So just adding that like little side note in.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been, if I had ignored the problems with Jace's school, it could have come to a point where, he really lashed out at school, hurt somebody,
Yeah.
or really, crossed over, like went over the line into truly hating school, which would be really
Yeah.
upsetting. Like, he loved school. So, I could have chosen that. I could have ignored it. And yeah, probably somewhere down the line, it would have come up to be like, you don't have the option to not address this now. Right. So
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think like, it's really, eclipse seasons are like a cosmic reset button. And so
Mhm.
you can choose to press the button or you can choose not to. But eventually these things are the things that are going to need to be worked on in your life. So they, you know, these eclipse seasons, while the energy is supporting it, is actually the best time to do it versus when it gets forced on you later.
I think we're going to talk about also you had asked me the question, I just remembered. What's the difference between
Oh yeah.
solar and lunar eclipses? So yeah, the first in this eclipse season, we had the lunar one first, right? We had the March 14th one was the lunar eclipse. And so that's more, lunar eclipses are more, when you think of the moon and lunar, it's more of like the feminine, the emotional release, right? Like the feminine side, the emotional release, spiritual release, also can be like emotional truths coming to the surface, a feminine energy reset. So that's really big in lunar eclipses. It's a highly divine feminine time. So perfect for the theme of this podcast. But yeah,
Yeah.
the divine feminine is so strong during lunar eclipses. And so it's like highlighting bringing emotional truths to the surface. Also
To
can
look at your
be,
inner world more.
yeah, more of the inner, like what is it? The yin and the yang. It's the yin side of things. It's the feminine, the yin. And then on the other hand, the solar, so the typically that would be a perfect explanation dichotomy because the solar is more often the masculine, right? So that's more often, and the solar eclipse was the culminating one. That was on March 29th. So when the solar eclipse happens, that's more of like new beginnings. It's more of like so if the lunar was reflecting and like shedding off all of the emotional layers, then the solar is like, okay, well, what's being reborn now? Like what is, I shed all those the layers off. What's now being reborn on the other side of this
Kind of
eclipse?
like that masculine, like what actions am I going to take based on all this stuff that I've now
Yes.
reflected on and dug through and torn apart. And okay, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you think of it like that, the lunar is more of the feminine side, the solar is more of the masculine side. So it's like, yeah, you're going deep inward to reflect, and then you're kind of pulling to the surface, okay, what are my outward facing actions and steps now that I'm coming out of this eclipse?
And then I think even too, like, at least for me, it was like, coming out of that was like looking more at my outer world. So it was like inner world and family, my kids, and then it was like coming towards the end of that eclipse season and even slightly after. So there's always like the energy before and after that always is semi-related as well. But I would say even after the solar eclipse, it was like
Yeah.
our relationships with others. It's like the relationship
Mm-hmm.
between the school and us, the relationship between the dads and us, the really like it was like taking a look at those outside pieces and what am I going to do about these now in relation to the realizations that I've had about myself and my children and how we want to live our lives and all of
Yeah.
that. So that makes so much sense. Um and
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think like okay, so let's talk about like what, like I said, there's that fear in a lot of people of eclipse seasons, like they're going to just tear apart your life and you're going to have no control and whatever. So let's talk a little bit about like the destructive quality of eclipses, which is to me, it should almost be more like called the deconstructing quality
Mm-hmm.
versus destructive, like deconstructing versus destructing, because
Yeah.
it's almost like I always picture it's like a kid playing with Lego and they're taking apart something that they built and then they're putting it back together as something completely different. You're not
Yeah.
actually losing anything. It is now just like you're taking the wisdom of before and the lessons you've learned and all of that and you're now building something completely new out of it, right? So there's a destruction in order to reconstruct. So a deconstruction in order to
I
reconstruct.
love that. I love that reframing of it. Yeah, because a lot of times people will see, so for example, like, maybe somebody lost a job like in eclipse season and they're really upset by that. But when you zoom out and you look at it from a bigger perspective, it's like, okay, well, there has to be some kind of reason, a bigger thing that's unfolding, why I
Yeah, like
lost this
maybe that
job
gave you
right
more
now.
time
Yeah.
for the business that you're trying to build, or maybe that gave you the freedom to find a job that works better with the hours that you want to, be available for. Maybe your
Yeah.
life has shifted since you got that job and it just doesn't fit anymore with the schedule that you want to have or
Yeah.
whatever. So
So
yeah.
yeah, it's very easy for us as humans to go into my life's falling apart, everything's in destruction, like, the almost like
Ah!
the victim mindset. It's very easy for us to go into that. But
Yeah.
if we just zoom out and come from that higher perspective, then we can get ourselves into that more. And I'm not saying toxic positivity or anything, but just in a better headspace to kind of wrap our minds around, okay, there's something bigger unfolding. Maybe I should look at that. And it also gives me hope. I can kind of like, and it gives me like headspace, like, okay, whatever fell away, now I have time to think and I can get clarity on like what my next steps are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just the thing with eclipse seasons. What makes it so scary, what makes it so easy to fall into that victim mode almost, is because it's so sudden. A lot of the time it's really sudden changes. It's things happening really, really quickly, breakups, vehicle breakdowns, job loss, like these really big sudden things. And along with those, especially if we are actively working on ourselves and sort of our spiritual paths and all of that, is this ego death that happens with it, of like, now I need to trust and release that control. And let's just say your ego mind is there for a reason. It's there to protect you, and it fights to the death to stick
Yeah.
around. So when you want to let it go, when you want to release control, when you want to trust, that is really hard because your ego is going to keep screaming at you and telling you like, no, you need to fix this. No, you need to get that job back. No, you need to get back together with that person you broke up with, whatever the case may be, right? And it takes active releasing and active trust, which is not something that we usually think of with those two words, right? To be active with those, but it is very much like this. You have to be intentional with it. You need to be focused on it, choosing it over and over and over again until the process is done, right? I'm choosing to release, I'm choosing to release, I'm choosing to release, right?
Yeah.
And
You know
trusting that
what?
on the other side, you're going to see why.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And you feel the difference too. Like I can say, when I have fully released and just trusted, I even feel the difference in my body. Like
mhm.
I'm not waking up with tension in my body. I'm not waking, I don't have like this, like I typically had like this tension in my neck and shoulders for like a long time, right? When
Yeah.
I have fully released and trusted in this path, like I'm not waking up with that tension anymore. It's like it's all melting away. So it's like you can feel these subtle differences even in your body, in the
Yeah.
physical. It just, yeah, it's crazy.
Well, and that reminds me of like my first business coach would always talk about like, and because I mean, I was coming from like Virgo beginnings kind of thing where it was like controlled and regulated and structured and like so,
Yeah.
and it was always like, let go of control. She's like, let go of the steering wheel, let go of the steering wheel. It always reminds me of that song, Jesus Take the Wheel, right? Like you're just holding on so tight. And when you're holding on so tight to anything, like even if it's just your hands squeezing, that tension, that grip is like riding all the way up your arm and up to your
Oh,
neck
yeah.
and to your jaw and everything. And as soon as you let that go, all of those muscles release. So when you're
Yeah.
trying to control, when your ego is trying to be in charge, when you are not trusting, you are holding on so tight, and it builds up so much tension in your body. And
Mm-hmm.
as soon
Mm-hmm.
as you let go of that steering wheel and you just allow, whatever you want to call it, like, the song is Jesus, whether you want to call it God, goddess, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, when you trust, yeah, you, like you said, you wake up, you're not tensed.
Mm-hmm.
You go to sleep, your mind is able to shut down and go to sleep for the night because you're not just overthinking everything. You go through your day without your teeth clenched all day long and your tongue stuck to the roof of your mouth and your jaw aching and getting migraines from it and all of that, like that stuff all just sort of fades away, and you don't realize because it happens gradually, right? But when you look back at it, you're like, wait a minute, like I'm so much calmer, I'm so much happier, I'm so much more relaxed. So
absolutely. And it takes a little while sometimes to catch up, because like yesterday, and like I was telling you in our chat, like I had the best day yesterday, like in months, right? And it was just like an amazing day. And it was just like I was so present to everything, and I was just appreciating like the beauty, and I was so full of gratitude about everything that was happening. And it made me think like, wow, this took probably like 2 weeks for this to catch up to me, because my daughter's been home for 2 weeks now. And so we've been getting into our new rhythm. And I'm like, sometimes it takes that long to to unwind from
for your
everything
nervous
that was
system.
happening before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that nervous system reset and that feeling of safety to arrive, right? Like, okay, yes, we can handle this, and yes, this is okay. And like, yeah, it's and again with our synchronicity, but like I had the same, like the last couple of days have just been like, wow, completely different from what things have been for a while, right? And it was the same. I even did like a little note on Substack about it, like my morning was like, there's fires already all around us here in Alberta, and they are actually really fairly close to where I live. And the last couple of summers have been really smoky here, and that makes it really difficult because we can't be outside as much. And we have like respiratory issues all summer long where normally we wouldn't, or things like that. And so when I saw that like fires were starting in May and like even in April, I was just like, oh my gosh, like my initial reaction was this dread of like, what is this summer going to be like? But the other morning I went out for my walk early in the morning. There was no smell of smoke. The skies were clear. But they're close. Like they're like 15 to 30 minutes away from me, these fires. And I'm like, it's clear here. This is beautiful. And I was just feeling so much gratitude. And, so I did like a little post about that. And I think someone even commented on there, like, that is some fireproof gratitude right there. Like, holy crap. Right. And it was just like, but I wasn't having to actively try to be grateful. It was just like, wow, like my life, like it was just this blissful feeling, right? Of like, it's like angels singing, like, like it's just like everything is amazing. But you're right. Like it took a while for that to actually become sort of my state of being after all of these transformations, right? So yeah, that's very synchronized as usual.
And I think also coming out of like, this was, like I was saying, one of the most transformative eclipse seasons I can ever remember in my since I started like following eclipses, right?
Started paying attention.
Yeah. And coming out of it, it's almost like I have this feeling like now I'm just accepting things can change next week. I'm not attaching myself so much to the outcome of it, because I'm like, things can change and that's okay. Because when they change and when they shift, it's for my highest good. That's what I've been telling myself.
Yep. And I think like one of the biggest things that comes out of releasing the control is that self-trust, and like, I'm going to be able to handle it. Whatever comes, whatever changes may happen next week, it's fine. I've proved to myself again and again and again, I can do this. So even if it might feel exhausting to think about constant change like that, it's like, once you let go of that control and you have that self-trust, it feels less exhausting. It's like, nope, we're just going with the flow. Like we're good. We're okay.
And honestly, so I haven't talked about this on this podcast yet, but I started a new podcast to talk about neurodiverse kids. So you'll hear it on that one if you come and follow me over there. But with my daughter's nervous system disability, I have to be in a constant, like, everything's fine, like I'm going with the flow, because she has PDA, which is persistent demand for anatomy. And so she views demands as it's a nervous system shutdown, and that's how her nervous system reacts to demands in her environment. So as a parent, I have to be so flexible in my approach with this child, like that I can't be high strung about things. Like I have to be the flexible person. I have to know that on a dime she could change her mind, or I have to shift my parenting strategy, and it's all just up in the air. So I'm like, this is like, it's a divine lesson coming out of
Yeah.
the eclipse, like tied to that, because it's like, okay, I have no choice right now but to be flexible with my child. Like this is her nervous system. This is her neurodiverse type,
Yeah, like she
right?
can't control that. She's not
Yeah.
choosing to be difficult, or she's not choosing to, go against what our original plan was and change everything again this week. And I think like, I mean, I know I've learned a ton. I'm super excited for your new podcast stuff and for your Substack and everything about this, because for me, I'm like, my kids haven't specifically been diagnosed with PDA, but you've said, and it makes so much sense to me, that it has these overlaps with autism and ADHD and stuff, which is stuff that I am dealing with my children. And I'm like, it's giving me so much insight into how I can parent them in a way that they feel seen and held and, safe. Like that's the biggest thing, where they just feel safe to just be who they are. And
Yeah.
that healing process is also like for them, and then for me as their parent, and I'm sure you would say the same, like it's just been so transformational, because at first you need that breakdown. So at first it gets worse, right? Like it was dang hard for a while there. And then now it's like, okay, now we're coming into this new rhythm, this new way of being with each other, and this new way of interacting, and we trust each other a little bit more. And there's, it's helped so much. So, I'm super blessed to be like I have Kelli in my pocket. Like she's just telling me this stuff about her kid. And I'm like, oh, that's so helpful for me, actually.
And that's my like researcher personality, right? As soon as I find out anything, like when I got that report and it said PDA, I was up all night researching, like what is PDA? How do I parent with PDA? How do I do this? How do I do like
and then she just sort of like verbally processes it all through me. And I'm like, this is perfect. Like I'm getting so much gold here. And I didn't have to do the research. Because she's just telling me all this stuff. But I think that's the big thing, is that with eclipses, it's like, yeah, there's all this falling apart part, but what we need to focus on is what actually comes with it, is that other side of the transformation, the other side of the coin, right? The rebirth part. And this can look like timeline jumps and quantum shifts and identity shifts. Like you said, like you've had this identity shift, you and probably Emma as well. And definitely for me, there has been into this like person who rests and just takes breaks and doesn't have her nervous system shut down on her because of taking those breaks. Like that felt really unsafe for me physically to take a break at the beginning. And at the same time, like, okay, not working for 3 months was not great on the finances, but at the same time, it's like I have quantum leaped into this new level of like embodiment and of who I am and what I can accomplish and what my business is doing and the leadership that I'm embodying and all of it. So
absolutely. And I definitely feel like I had a quantum leap. Even in the past week, I feel like I jumped again, because yesterday I was just zooming out thinking about it, and everything was just going so smoothly, even down to like interactions with my husband over dinner, and just like all of this stuff was just like, this is just going so smooth. I'm like, this is new. Like, this is really new.
timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I like it. I want more of this. Like,
yes. Yeah. And I think like for me, while I was going through all of these things in my outer world, there was so much going on in the inner world. Like I mentioned earlier in this episode, we both were in the Moonai Key, second set of Moonai Key rites. And it was there. My intuition had a massive upgrade. Like I now am like, I just know stuff, and I know stuff on such a deeper level. And I know like really more detailed stuff. Like it's just, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like, holy crap. And it's all day, every day. It's not only when I, you know, focus on keeping my energy perfectly squeaky clean, or only when I journey, or only when I, you know, like it's just sort of like this blanket upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had a lot of clarity come in about my business, and I know you did as well, and about like our missions here, our purpose, and like everything that we're trying to do, and sort of how all the different pieces of all the different things that we do, how they all tie together, and like what we're doing with them and where we're going with them. And it was just so much like deep clarity, and not just the clarity, but like the integration of that clarity. Like it's settled deeply in my soul now, versus just like, oh, I got this clarity and then poof, it's gone because I'm so busy with my outside life. It's like, no, it like planted itself in me where it's really deeply there, and it's so ingrained. And that's been transformational as well. So there's, you know, in that trust is remembering that there are two sides to that coin, that all of that falling apart, all of that deconstructing that's happening comes with, on the other side, a rebuild, a rebirth, and not reconstruction. So,
and I would say everything you just said makes so much sense with that 18-month cycle too, because I was just thinking, like myself, like, so I had started, and it was in a session with you, in a shamanic session, like last February of
I remember.
2024, that the first ideas of this kids neurodiverse, like witchy school came through. And I was like, I have no clue what to do with this right now. And I have, like a year later, I'm like, oh, now I know.
Yeah, that thing you said then now makes sense. Or like, like now I get it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it is coming more to more clarity now, and I can see that bigger vision. Whereas before I was like, okay, I don't get this. I have all these separate pieces. I'm doing these like, you know, Reiki or Akashic record sessions, and then I'm doing this piece, and then I have this idea for a kids school, but I really have no clue what I'm going to do with it. But now, after all of these eclipses, and after these portals, and after all of this transformative energy, I feel that clarity.
It's like
So
it
there's
shifted from
definitely,
Lego blocks into like woven threads in a tapestry, right? Like it's just this,
yeah,
it was so clunky. And the same with mine, with my business. Like I knew I had like every one of the pieces. I'm like, no, this is aligned. But it was like, how
yeah,
do I make my message clear when I talk about 7 or 8 different things, right? And it's like, it's like, but no, like they are right. I know they're right. I know I have to do these pieces. But now it's like it's woven into this beautiful picture where I'm like, oh my gosh, I get how they all fit, right? And it's just like,
yeah,
oh,
same.
it's such a relief, really. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, okay. So I think we've sort of covered all of like our takes on it and like everything that's been going on with us. But what we sort of now need to come back to is the ancient myths around eclipses. This was the biggest thing that we found. So we were, you know, we both were kind of researching, you know, maybe divine feminine practices around eclipses or anything like that. And there wasn't like a huge number, but there was, just some really fascinating stuff about what they believed about eclipses, and then how we can see like how that ties into the ways that these divine feminine led cultures operated, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of the time in ancient times, eclipses were seen as messages or omens from the gods, right? In some cultures, it was like divine displeasure, specifically, like they were terrified of it. And a lot of that had to do with the light would go out, right? Like the moon would block the sun and there was no light, and they were like, something's very, very wrong, right? So they would see it as like a warning, or and then in other cultures, it was like a blessing more, or they were very in tune and knew that it was like the veil between the worlds was thin, and they were able to get bigger transformations and deeper messages and all of this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, do you want to kind of go first on any of the ones that stuck out to you? And
Yeah. So I would say I thought it was really interesting on okay, the Mayan was really interesting to me because they saw eclipses as almost like a battle between the gods. So they seen it as like the sun god was hidden behind the moon, and then they required these renewal rituals to restore balance. So I feel very connected to that because of my sort of like my witchy practices, and like I do a lot of kind of rituals around like cleansing energy and restoring balance and like all of these different things, right? So, Mayans were doing that. They were kind of saying, okay, let's use this eclipse, this thing that's happening in the sky, as a way to reset, as a way to restore balance, as a way to kind of like almost reset energies, restore balance, like, and kind of have this like masculine and feminine rebalancing, which if we kind of look at it at what's happening in the world now, and a lot of things that are kind of like in flux right now, but a lot of us, that's what we're really trying to do, right? We're trying to get back to this, like, let's restore feminine masculine balance. Let's come from that place of the empowered feminine and empowered masculine, and let's work with both of these energies in order to create a better path forward, to create that better earth that we all want to get to, right? So I thought
Yeah.
that was highly interesting and can be related now as we're moving through these times that can be uncertain. But I know even with like shamanism and different practices like that, there's a lot, and in our Munaiki rites as well, there's a lot of reference to finding this balance and creating this better version of Earth.
Yeah. And helping to sustain like the actual physical earth, right? That's so tied in with it too. And
Yeah.
I think like what you were saying there, there's this, so many of us are trying to restore this balance, and literally like this is what we're doing with this podcast. Like, yes, we're focusing on the divine feminine, but here's why. And it's because there needs to be this healthy divine feminine for the healthy divine masculine to be able to come in and hold space for. The divine masculine has no job if there's no divine feminine for it to hold and like be the structure for. And so there's
Yeah.
because of all the patriarchal stuff and whatever that has like made it so that the divine feminine basically went into hiding, like it just wasn't visible in the world.
Yeah.
That's why we're specifically trying to bring back the divine feminine practices. And not because that divine masculine doesn't matter, but because it will automatically return when there's a divine feminine for it to hold. I believe that anyway. So, and I mean, that ties in really well with like Native American and like Navajo beliefs around eclipses and stuff like that, right? They see it as not necessarily something to fear. It's part of the natural rebalancing of like, there's usually a portal, right? It's not just one eclipse. There's usually a lunar and a solar.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, they saw that as like, okay, the earth is just like rebalancing its energies. Like that's kind of how they looked at it. Right. And I thought that made so much sense to me.
Yeah.
It just was very like, I mean, obviously they had really powerful verbal traditions. And so they probably told the stories and they knew like, this is something that happens again and again and again. But I really thought that it was interesting how like, probably there might've been a couple others as well, but out of like all the ones that we researched, it was like the Native American, the Navajo, like these are the ones that were like, we're not going to die. It's just a normal rebalancing. It's okay. Like, so I really liked that. And some of the others, like there were ones where it was like, oh, we need to appease the god. We need to do the gods. We need to do these rituals, or, even with some of them, they still looked at it as like the moon is the feminine and the sun is the masculine. So it was like the mother and father god were fighting. Like that's how they kind of looked at it, right? And and they would be terrified, like what's going to be the fallout from this, godly war that's going on. So yeah, those are the ones I mainly sort of felt aligned with. There was definitely Oh, there was a couple others. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I felt like there was some other ones that, like you said, were more on the negative side. Or like people were like, oh my gosh, it's like the apocalypse, right? Like the world's gonna end, like sort of thing. But if we, again, like bringing it back to these present times, right? We have people on both sides of the coin still, right? We have people who are like, okay, we're in, like, there's some crazy times right now, but we're gonna be good. We got to keep our vision focused. Like we have to keep doing what we're doing, right? To create this better earth, this better way of living. And then you have the people on the other side of the coin who are like, no, it's like destruction. It's the end of times. Like everything's falling. Like we're in the apocalypse. So
I
we've
always have
always
to
had,
wonder what they said after the fact. Like, okay, we're not dead. So
yeah, well, they keep pushing the timeline out further.
yeah, maybe.
But it's like we've always had these two types of people on, when things are happening, there's always going to be those two sides of the coin. And I think it's coming back to like finding that masculine and feminine balance, or finding a balance in it, is the best path forward, because it's like we can see things are shifting. We can see the eclipse energies like shifted a lot. Maybe in some people's viewpoints might have been destructive, but then we can also see the other side where it's like it's positive change coming out of it.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, but I always thought that was really funny, just the dual the dual viewpoints in the
Yeah.
world that have always been there. Like no matter what we're going through at that particular time in history, there's always those two kind of extremes.
Well, and if you really think about it, just like with anything else, without the negative, we don't notice the positive. We need
Yeah.
both sides. They both matter. They're both important. And that's been a huge thing for me. Actually, that's one of the biggest things probably that came through this like 4+ months, whatever, of like rough
Yeah.
times for me, was this complete acceptance of I mean, not that I'm perfect or anything with it, but this like unconditional love for all
Yeah.
beliefs and circumstances, where it's just like, nope, like just because something feels negative, like there I still can hold love and space for that, because it has a purpose. It has like, whether its purpose is just to be the opposite of that positive thing or what I perceive as positive.
Yeah.
Because without both sides, you don't get the other, right? And actually, um one of the I forgot about this part, but the Navajo specifically, they see the interaction, like this was what I wrote, was they see the interaction of the sun, which is male, and the moon, which is female, as a sacred event that should not be observed. So like, I mean, we're not supposed to look at eclipses because it can actually damage your eyes. I mean, you look at the sun, it damages your eyes. So it's the same, right? It's just
Yeah.
focused points of the sun, like smaller pieces of it, but you're still looking at the sun. So like, don't look at it. But
Yeah.
I really liked that, where it was like, this is a sacred rebalancing. This is a sacred conjoining of masculine and feminine. This is a sacred
Mm-hmm.
moment, right? And it was a solemn thing for them, not like, uh, like not something to fear, not something to, and not something to revere either. Like it wasn't a spectacle either. It was just very solemn. Like, this is special and private, like just like a
Yeah.
man and a woman in the bedroom, or whatever, or like whoever in the bedroom, but like it's
Yeah.
private, and like look away. And I thought that was really interesting also. And then also, so here's where like the negative, okay, so I just said, like, I've started to come to this acceptance place of like, all experiences are positive in the sense that they all have a purpose and they all serve something, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we sort of talked about was how, like, okay, for ancient people, they may not have known the science of it, or maybe they did. Some of these ancient cultures, I swear, like they knew so much more than us scientifically, and a lot of that was lost, right? But
Yeah.
but if they were to look at an eclipse, because it was like, oh, what is happening to the sun right now? It would have burned their eyes. And so they would have thought this is a bad thing because it hurt or it damaged them, right? So it was like, and they would interpret that as maybe a god's wrath or like whatever negativity, right? And then when you think about Christianity and the patriarchy and all of that, where it comes in and it's like darkness equals evil. And it's like, then you really just amplify that negativity, right? You really like, okay, the moon is blocking the sun. Wait a second, the moon is feminine. Eclipses are bad because the feminine is coming in blocking the masculine. Like that was really, it was like, wait a minute, right? So there's really like, there's so many layers to how the patriarchy, we'll just put it at that, or like colonialism, right, came in and stomped out the feminine by making it seem like it was evil, like it was tied with the darkness, meant that it was evil, because it is tied with the darkness, right? The feminine is that, like the moon, that darker, like that introspective, our insides, which would be darker because they're inside of us, right? Like just I just thought that was so, you know, it tied in with everything else that we've ever really talked about on this podcast, where like the patriarchy coming in and stomping out the divine feminine, it's like just one more layer where they were able to add like, yeah, look, that feminine moon, she's bad, she's blocking out the light, she's, you know what I mean, like, and turning it into this negative thing.
And then it would make so much sense, like taking it from there, and how you know, it was very much like they went from ancient divine feminine practices where they revered women's bodies and menstruation was beautiful and women are fertile, they make babies, it's just a beautiful process. And then they took that after and in the patriarchal times and colonialism and with all of that coming in, I actually view that as more of dark ages, right? That because they wiped out the ancient feminine practices, and then they kind of almost othered women as like, no, like periods are bad, like you have to be banned when you're menstruating and you can't do things, and it was just all this crazy stuff that was like, now all of a sudden women's bodies were seen as a negative or an evil thing. Dirty. And dirty. And I think it goes back to like the beginning of the world creation story, really, with Adam and Eve. Like it goes back to that. And it's just like,
and for me, how was there any creation without a feminine being? Like a woman or a female is who births. So there needed to be a feminine aspect in the creation story. And of course, like, the Adam and Eve story, like Eve was the one that, you know, got tricked by the serpent. Well, the serpent, we also know, stands for the divine feminine. So like they really took everything and just manipulated it into like a yes. And I mean, again, like this is not us bashing Christianity, but the original, like when they first started coming in and forcing their beliefs on others is what we're talking about specifically is so wrong. Like there's nothing specifically wrong about Christianity itself. It's more like, are they then forcing themselves on others? Are they then like shutting down other beliefs? Right. And that's just the thing, is like a lot of these divine feminine societies that were like more matriarchal led or things like that, they never stomped out the masculine. That wasn't like, they may have been the ones that people looked to. A lot of the time bloodlines were traced through the mother line, not the father line, right? Where nowadays, like you take the man's name or like maybe not, less and less more as time goes by here, but like for a long time it was you take the man's name, the lines are traced through the father line, but actually like most of humanity, it was traced through the mother line. And that wasn't about bashing the father, but the father could take off, the mother never, like the mother didn't, she was with the children, right? So it was like, it's just sort of it was like, it was more logical, and the masculine was also highly revered and much needed in support of the feminine, right? So there was no like you're not good enough masculine. It's only
Right.
about women, right? It was, and when
Everybody had a part to play, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we think like there's this imbalance, is where they came in, they stomped out that reverence for the feminine, that admission of the need for the feminine, and you know, like all of that, like it's just this. And that's why, even though there was not a lot when we did our research, there was not a lot about like specific divine feminine practices anywhere in the world that we looked at, right? In relation to eclipses. That's why it still felt so aligned for this podcast, was just like there was this darkness and light aspect to it, which has so much to do with everything that we talk about. So,
Yeah.
And again, both sides of the coin. We need the darkness in order to see the light. We need the light in order to notice the darkness, right? So like we have to have both, is the whole point.
Yeah. And while you were talking, I was actually thinking about this. I feel like I'm pulling a lot of current events happenings into this episode, but today, in the Catholic Church, they just got a new pope sworn in, right? And that is still masculine. A woman is not allowed to be the pope of the Catholic Church still to this day. And when you think about that, it's like, wow, like, you know,
in a lot of Christian faiths still, it's all very masculine
yeah.
led. It's very patriarchal. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, when we talk about these things, they're very much still impacting the present day in these certain traditions. And when they kind of stamp feminine, divine feminine spiritual practices and then moved into Christianity, we're still seeing the effects of this, and we're still, you know, and I don't know, I don't particularly follow like Catholicism a lot anymore because I stepped out of it, so I don't even know if women are like fighting to be priest or in charge or anything. I don't know the whole story behind it, but we know what we see in the public, right? And that is that women are not allowed to have public facing roles in that particular faith, in that particular religion.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I can logically understand the take of it, where it's like, well, the mother's role is at home, the mother's role is birthing babies, blah, blah, but like you are so minimizing what a woman is capable of when you make that all that she can do, right? That's where it becomes an issue for me. And there was something else. Oh, so another thing you were talking about before we actually started recording was, actually, I think you might have even messaged it to me earlier today, was about how the Catholic Church, like some of their practices are so, you called it witchy, but I mean, really they're like the divine feminine practices, right? Like the smoke energy clearing, like the incense is
Incense.
smudge. Like it's the same thing, right? Like and so
Oh yeah, and then so my mom texted me this, and this is what sparked that comment to you, because she said that she was watching them, she was waiting for them to announce the new pope, and they have some kind of white smoke that materializes, and then the pope steps out of it and like reveals himself or something. And I immediately texted her, and I'm like, okay, so like they have these practices that seem kind of witchy or like from a Harry Potter movie.
yeah.
Like, it just made me crack up. Like,
Appeared in a puff of smoke. Yeah. And it's not like truly, I know we're giggling about this and whatever, but we're not making fun of what they're actually doing.
No, right.
There's nothing funny about it. Like, honestly, that
it's
like
ceremonial.
smoke as a cleansing, it's ceremonial.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So like we respect that totally. It's just, we're just laughing at the, like how ironic it is, right? Because it's just like, but that's what we're doing too. Like there's no difference, right? And like, you know, they may have made it a little bit more theatrical, making it like a super thick cloud of smoke that you couldn't see who it was until they appeared or whatever. But like, it's just, I mean, you're going to get that with anything. You're going to get that with shamans, with witches, with whoever. Like you're going to get people who are just more dramatic and people who are less so, but like it's the same thing. So
yeah, I've been seeing a ton more like that recently too. Around Easter, somebody had this video, and it was like in Spain at a Catholic church, and it looked very, very dark, witchy, kind of like, just, I don't know, like these hoods on, and like,
Oh.
and even that, wouldn't even say witchy, I would say more like dark magic type of thing. But you just look at this different sort of these different rituals, and you start to understand that we all basically came from similar roots, and people just took off with different religions, right?
Well,
And
and they
they
took
took
off with their
pieces of
different
those
explanations of it.
explanations. Yeah.
And the problem only arises when it's like our explanation can be the only true one, because
Yes.
then you're stamping out other people's beliefs. You're not allowing people their freedoms. You're not, all of that. And that's really what it comes down to. And so yeah, like that's just that's how, to me, it made so much sense, right? To do this eclipse talking, like to just be like, okay, we're talking specifically divine feminine and divine masculine when we're talking about the sun and the moon,
Yeah.
right? So it was so tied in. I thought it was such a great, and I know this episode was really all over the place. Like we had so many different things that we sort of touched on. But to be honest, that is the chaos of an eclipse anyways, right?
Yes. And then with our break, we needed to catch up on
Yeah.
and a lot of stuff. So,
and actually one of the things that was like we had made notes on was seeing the chaos as an initiation onto your next path. So like just okay, this episode was a little chaotic, but it's really like we're sort of starting out a new way of showing up on this podcast, even maybe a little bit. And it's all okay, and it's all perfect. So
yeah. And I think even like reframing that word chaos itself, right? It's so many people think of it as negative. But what if it's just like this divine restructuring that's just coming in, and it's meant to happen the way it happens? And the more, like we were talking about earlier, the more you resist it, the worse the quote unquote chaos is going to be. But when you lean into it and you trust, and you just keep following those nudges, keep following those intuitions, those inner callings, and that are leading you to the path that you're meant to be on, then that quote unquote chaos that feels so bad and negative starts to not feel as bad, right? It starts to feel more like, okay, I'm leaning into this. What do I need to reveal next? What do I need to know next?
And I think that that's just it. Okay. I think that was like, I had so many little like brain explosions while you were just talking just now. I have to try to like structure my thoughts a little bit, but honestly, chaos is where creation comes from. You create from that chaos into something more structured. And
yeah,
I also had the realization, and I think I've probably either heard or read it somewhere else before as well, that the feminine is chaos, like that feminine is more chaotic. And that's because like we have, our cycles are so much more extreme. Our hormones are up and down and all around, all of these things. So like we can be seen as chaotic, and that's something that the patriarchy branded as, again, negative.
Yeah.
Just like darkness, they branded chaos as negative. It was very much tied in with like the devil and hell. Like you would be down there burning in the fiery, chaotic pits of hell. Like that fits their description. But chaos being the potential for anything is actually not really that negative, right? It's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, yeah, there's chaos. But that's where this brilliant idea came out of. That's where, and when you're resisting that chaos, when you're trying to force it into a structure that you think is what is best, right? It like you have all this resistance, you have all the struggles, but when you allow chaos to form itself into whatever it's trying to create, all of a sudden you have this beautiful outcome that's handed to you. And that that is to say, again, we don't want to like only be in the feminine, only be in the chaos, only be in the flow. We want to have a mix of both, right? But it's definitely not just a negative in and of itself. So
yeah, I love that. And even thinking, just to add one more quick thing, because I know we've been talking a while now, but when you think about the dark space of like the womb, right? That is a pure potential creation energy right there. And that is what like we are birthing, like we're consistently birthing creativity, creative energies, ideas, intuitions. We're consistently birthing these things into the world through feminine energy.
Yep, which is kind of chaotic. Let's just start owning it. Just like this episode. Okay.
Yes.
So, I feel like that was even there was stuff being shed, even talking about that. It feels like there's just been energy moving big time in this episode.
Yeah, I felt that too.
Yeah, so I mean, that's all that I really wanted to touch on. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add, but
no, I think that wraps it up pretty well. Yeah. I mean, and just even thinking going forward on, like you said, going forward on this podcast, this feels so good just to kind of like be more open style. Like, let's just talk about these things and let's just tie them to what's going on in real time and just kind of like throw it all out there. And I think doing that we're kind of connecting these concepts into real time.
Yeah, connecting the dots for people. So
Yeah.
All right, well, amazing. I'm so glad that we finally got an episode done. You know, we've been trying for so long. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of the rest of these episodes going forward. And
thank you so much to everyone, and we will be back. Not entirely sure when, but we will be back in the future for another episode.
Maybe soon, maybe not. We're trusting.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like it and subscribe. And if you really loved it, we would love a 5-star review, which helps us reach more people with our message. Comment your thoughts on the episode below, or if you have any questions you'd like us to answer in a future episode. Talk to you next time.